I was taking a road trip with my good friend Carter to visit some other friends from college. The drive was pretty far, about 15 hours. But we thought with the both of us, we should be able to do it in one long go. I started driving first, then about 4 hours in, Carter took over. The plan was for me to sleep while he drove. But I genuinely couldn't. I don't know what it was, but I was never able to get comfortable. By the time it was my turn to drive again, I was pretty tired, maybe even more so than I was before he took over. I was still able to keep my eyes open and pay attention to the road. But somehow, I never noticed the gas tank getting really low. We were driving Carter's old Chevy, which didn't have the fancy tech to alert you when your tank was low. There was just a gas gauge that I never even looked at. It wasn't until the car started sputtering that I quickly realized we had nothing in the tank. Carter woke up and started searching on his phone for the nearest gas station. But not even 30 seconds later I had to pull off the highway because the car wouldn't accelerate anymore. I felt so stupid. Even worse, Carter said the closest gas station was 4 miles up the road. We were in the middle of nowhere, just plains all around us, and there were no other cars on the road. We talked over our options for a few minutes, but ultimately Carter decided he'd walk to the nearest gas station and bring back a canister while I stayed and watched the car. Maybe not the best plan, but it felt like a waste to call for help and pay $200 for some gas when the station was still within walking distance. Although it was 1 a.m. and dark outside, Carter didn't seem bothered as he left the car and started heading down the road. Within a minute, he was out of sight. I sat back and thought about how stupid I was for getting us into this situation. A couple minutes later, I saw headlights coming down the road from ahead. They passed by going much slower than they should have, maybe 15 or 20. I watched in the side mirror and saw they didn't speed up after passing. Instead, they slowed down even more, eventually stopping and doing a 3-point turn to come back around. I didn't want to admit I was out of gas or needed help, and I didn't have to. They came back down the road, passing by even slower this time, maybe 5 miles per hour. Probably staring through the windows at me before picking up speed and heading back the way they came. What was that about? I kept my eyes glued to the road, waiting to see if they came back. I had a bad feeling. Maybe it was just my gut, but I started to think something could go wrong soon. I called Carter, hoping to tell him to hurry up. The phone rang all the way through, no answer. I called again, still nothing. At this point, I wasn't thinking rational. I decided to ditch the car and try to catch up with Carter. It had only been 10 or 15 minutes since he walked away, so I figured I could jog and reach him in a few minutes. I got out, locked the car and started jogging down the side of the road. It was so quiet that whenever I stopped running, I could hear the ringing in my ears from the silence. I jogged for 15 minutes. I thought I would have caught up to Carter by then, unless something made him start running. I pulled out my phone to call him again, and that's when I heard it ringing. It was faint, coming from somewhere off the side of the road. I looked out at the grass beyond the shoulder and barely saw a light glowing. My body tensed. Carter, no response. I couldn't see anything, except the dim phone screen. I stepped off the road into the grass, calling out again. Finally I heard Carter's voice, faint, but urgent, telling me to get down. I still couldn't see him, but I ducked into the grass. That's when I looked back and saw a car coming down the road, the same one I'd seen earlier, creeping along slowly. They were looking for us. The car made several slow passes, turning around multiple times, clearly searching. When they finally left, we booked it to the gas station. Carter told me the driver had initially pulled over and tried to get him into his car. The man was extremely creepy and didn't hide his bad intentions. When Carter refused, the man stepped out of his car, so Carter ran into the grass to hide. At some point, his phone fell out of his pocket, but he was too afraid to move and stayed hidden until I found him. We eventually made it to the gas station, got help and told the police about the guy, describing his car in detail, but they never found him. It was a horrifying close call, and I still feel bad for being the reason we ended up in that situation. One thing's for sure, I'll never forget to fill up the gas tank again. Story 2. By Anonymous. This was back in 2014. I almost never went on road trips back then because I rarely had time to take multiple days off just to drive. Plus, the additional time to actually enjoy the vacation. However, I was between jobs when my family was planning a surprise 50th birthday party for my dad. Back then, gas was way cheaper than it is now, and flying was a lot more expensive compared to driving. So, both to save money and because I didn't have a job, I decided to make the drive. To be safe, I made it a 3-day road trip. After the first full day of driving, I pulled into the nearest motel and booked myself for the night. It wasn't the nicest place, but I didn't mind. I slept in until 11 hours, then packed up and opened the door to head out, only to be startled by a man standing right in the doorway. "Excuse me." I tried to get past him, but he didn't really move, so it was a bit awkward. The man looked to be in his mid-40s and had heavy bags under his eyes. Overall, not the kindest face. As I moved the rest of my things into the car, he remained standing outside the motel room, creepily watching me. Good thing I wasn't staying there any longer. I checked out of the motel and headed back onto the road. This was my longest day of driving. I planned to get at least 10 hours in. The first while went pretty well. A lot of it was through towns and cities. But about 5 or 6 hours in, they faded out and it became more rural, with long stretches of road. Once I realized towns were getting few and far between, I stopped at the next gas station to fill up. I paid, started the pump, and went inside to get a coffee for the road. When I came back out, I saw someone had pulled their car up really close to mine, so close from the front that it looked like their bumper was touching the back of my car. It was a deep red, old Corolla. Nobody was outside putting gas in, and the windshield was tinted so dark I couldn't see a thing. Still, I had the uneasy sense someone inside was watching me. I quickly removed the pump, got in, and drove off. Almost immediately after, the Corolla left too, still never having fueled up, and pulled behind me to merge onto the highway. I told myself it was just a coincidence and kept driving. For a while I noticed them about 5 or 6 cars back, but as the sun set, I couldn't really tell what cars were what, just a cluster of headlights. As it got later, fewer and fewer cars were out. After about 4 more hours without seeing that Corolla again, I'd almost forgotten about it. By then I was more concerned about staying awake. The nearest main city was still 2 hours away, and I wanted to make it there for a nicer hotel, maybe even check out the city in the morning. But that depended on whether my eyes would stay open. I figured another coffee might help, not even for the caffeine but for the distraction of sipping on it. So, I took the next exit for a gas station. Right away, I saw the convenience store section was closed. Disappointed, I decided to at least top off my gas. Almost immediately a single pair of headlights pulled off the empty highway and started down the exit ramp toward me. The place was already creepy, just a dark standalone gas station, with nothing around it. The outdoor lights barely illuminated the pumps, and beyond them, there was nothing but blackness. When I recognized the car coming toward me as the deep red Corolla from earlier, my heart rate spiked. I couldn't shake the thought that I was being followed. I hurried to unplug the nozzle and hang it back, but the Corolla pulled in fast, not even going to a pump, but stopping right beside my driver's door. I got in just as the passenger door opened, and a man stepped out, running straight to my car and trying to open my door. It only took a second of looking at him to realize it was the same man from the motel. Those unnerving eyes sent chills through me. I started my car. When he realized he couldn't open the door, he stopped and just looked at me. I expected to see anger or frustration. Instead, what I saw was worse. He was grinning from ear to ear like it was all a game. A complete psychopath. I floored it back to the highway and didn't stop until I reached the city. Thankfully, I'm almost certain I wasn't followed. What really scares me is that the man got out from the passenger seat, meaning someone else was driving him, someone who was in on whatever sick plan they had. They had followed me for over 10 hours from the motel. Even worse, they could have been trailing me the day before without me ever knowing. I still can't forget that road trip, even a decade later. Story 3 by Kaleb J. A few years ago, when I was in college, I was heading home to meet up with my family over winter break. The drive was nearly across the entire country, meaning multiple long days of non-stop driving. I was a broke college student, so I wasn't booking any hotels or even motels. I packed some blankets in the back seat and figured I'd sleep wherever I could, whenever I got tired. Around 1 hour a.m., after 11 hours straight on the road, I finally called it quits for the night. I was getting dangerously tired, so I found the next rest stop and pulled over. It was one of those small pull-offs right on the side of the highway, meant for just a few cars or trucks. It had a little building with a washroom and a couple vending machines. There was only one other car parked there in the farthest spot back, so I parked on the opposite side for privacy. I got out to stretch my legs and use the restroom. It definitely wasn't clean in there, but I did my business and headed back to my car. That's when I saw a man standing right outside my window, peering inside. Can I help you?" My voice startled him. He stepped back, chuckled nervously, and said he was just checking to see if anyone was in there, so he could ask for some cash for the vending machine. My car had clear, untinted windows. There was no reason for him to be pressed up against them like that. "Yeah, I've got no cash." "Sorry, man," I said, walking around him to get in my car. To my surprise, he didn't leave. He tried to start another conversation, asking what brought me out there that night. I'm on a road trip. Sorry, but I really need to get some sleep. I can't talk right now." I got in my car. He waved, "Sorry," and walked to the other car. I felt relieved he wasn't just a homeless guy hanging around. But looking back, in a normal state of mind, I probably would have just left for the next rest. I reorganized the mess in my front seat, tossed everything into the back, reclined my seat as far as it would go, and tried to get comfortable. I had my eyes shut for just a few minutes before I noticed some lights moving around outside my car. That made me open my eyes to see what it was. I sat up, looking in the mirror, and saw that the guy had moved his car right up behind mine. I watched for a minute, unsure why he'd moved at all. But with things getting a little too creepy, I knew I had to take the loss and just find somewhere else to sleep. I pulled my seat back up, tossed my car in drive, and got back on the highway. I had a few unfriendly words to say under my breath about that dude as I pulled away. There weren't a lot of places to stop at on this stretch of road, so this inconvenience was going to cost me at least 30 to 40 minutes. It was dangerous how tired I was on this drive. My eyelids would close for a second or two, then shoot back open once I realized I was dozing off. This pretty much went on and off the whole way, until I finally reached the next rest stop, or what was a rest stop. It looked very similar to the other one, except it was without a doubt abandoned or out of service. The building was all taped up and decaying, and graffiti covered most of the exterior. Still, it was a place to pull off, and I figured I wouldn't have any issues sleeping here for just a few hours. Not sure if it was because the place was quiet and abandoned, or because I was just really tired, but I passed out within a minute. I have to say, before I woke up, I got some pretty good sleep. I think I slept from 2 hours a.m. to 4 hours a.m. before I woke up violently to a crash against my car. The whole car shook as I scrambled to figure out what the hell happened. I looked in my left mirror, seeing a car's headlights parked right behind me. Then I looked in the right mirror. There was a man right beside my car with a metal baseball bat. He swung it again, bursting the back window. I kept yelling, "What the fuck?" over and over, trying to get my keys and get away. The man came up to the passenger window, and that's when I saw it was the guy from the other rest. He had this sinister smile and started taunting me, saying "liar" repeatedly as he kept swinging the bat against my car, then staring at me with that smile and calling me a liar again. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I was able to get the car on and leave before it got worse. I called 911, my phone shaking in my hand as I drove away. I was able to meet up with an officer at a gas station, where I explained the incident and took note of the damage to my car. 2 windows were shattered, dents were scattered all over the doors, and somehow I hadn't noticed that my back right tire was also slashed and almost flat. Another officer went to the abandoned rest stop, finding all the glass shards on the ground, but the man was already long gone. They notified all patrol cars of the man's appearance and vehicle, but came up empty-handed. After being stuck in an unknown town for a few days to get my car fixed, I was able to make it home safely. It's crazy how insane some people are. I assume that guy lost it over something as simple as me not giving him a few bucks for the vending machine, or even just not wanting to talk to him at 1 a.m. on the side of a highway. The fact that I could have died that night over something so absurd is horrifying.